Welcome, fertility sisters, to the True Fertility Podcast. I'm your host, Lea Nicole Trujillo, a wife, mom, and therapist turned fertility coach after a challenging 7-year journey to conceive. Join me for stories from those who've walked this path, tips for your fertility and IVF journey, and some fertility-related girl talk. So let's sprinkle some of that baby dust because it's time for True Fertility. Kim Kardashian, Khloe Kardashian, Tan France, Gabrielle Union, and Paris Hilton. What do they all have in common? They all used a surrogate to bring their babies earthside. So today we are going to get into all of this juicy celeb details about surrogacy and how it's played out for them. And we'll also go ahead and examine how this actually works for everyday real people. With my special guest, Jessie Jaskulsky, we'll be busting those surrogacy myths and shedding some light on what surrogacy is like in the real world. And also just spilling some tea about the celebs. We'll be covering some controversial quotes from the Kardashians and also share an amazing clapback from Tan France himself. And on the more practical side, we'll be debunking myths and talking about the true cost of surrogacy, some ways to finance it, and how to even screen for a potential surrogate. On top of that, we'll examine some of the medical conditions that may lead someone to pursue surrogacy and some of the emotional challenges associated with using a surrogate. So whether you're here for your own personal reasons regarding surrogacy or for the Hollywood gossip, this episode is one you don't want to miss. Now, before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to offer my listeners an opportunity to snag my free class, Triple Your IVF Success with Less Stress. Inside this free masterclass, you'll receive 2 simple tools that you can start on today that have been proven to triple your success rates when trying to conceive. These tools not only help you boost your fertility, but also help you feel better now. So if you're looking to get your baby in your arms faster, reduce the number of IVF rounds, and ultimately save money, time, and energy, this is the tool for you. Go to www.leanicolecoaching.com, that's LEANICOLE, coaching.com to grab this free class while it's available. All right, guys. Welcome to another edition of the True Fertility Podcast. I am here today with my friend, Jessie Jaskulsky, and she is the owner of Surrogacy Simplified.
Thank you for having me. So nice to be here.
Yes, I am so excited to have this discussion today. We are going to be talking about celebrities, surrogacy, breaking down any myths, and seeing how surrogacy plays out in real life with real people too.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to have Jessie here. She is actually a surrogacy consultant and white glove concierge dedicated to helping intended parents through the entire process of surrogacy from start to finish. After a devastating 22-week loss, Jessie developed secondary infertility and needed a gestational carrier to safely bring both of her daughters earthside. Jessie founded her company, Surrogacy Simplified, as a way to provide intended parents with all of the support, logistics, and coordination to have an amazing surrogacy journey. So thank you again for being here today, Jessie.
My pleasure.
I also just wanted to point out that I found Jessie through Instagram, and she has just been kicking ass over there. I'm just going to say it. She has so much great information about surrogacy and really breaks down all sorts of, misunderstandings and myths, and partners with a lot of different companies and other experts in the field to really bring some great information to people all over the world. So thank you so much for all you do already, Jessie.
Oh, that means so much to me. And I just this week came out with an ebook that is free for anybody interested. You can get to it either through social media or on my website. And it's The Beginner's Guide to Surrogacy. So it has all of the information because I totally recognize how overwhelming it can feel. And now that way it's like written down in one place and you can reference it back.
Oh, I love that. That's going to be so helpful for everyone. And I can go ahead and put the link to that in the show notes. But as I mentioned today, we're going to be talking really about a particular article. This article is actually from Entertainment Tonight, and it's called Hollywood Surrogacy Spotlight: What to Know About the Process Used by Paris Hilton and More Stars. So that article has so much information. There's so many different stars covered in that article, but we're also going to break down some of the information in there and again get to kind of real life stuff. How does this impact real people aside from just celebrities?
Yeah, that sounds great. I love that there's so many celebrities that have gone through the surrogacy process, but then there's a part of me that just feels the need to keep reassuring people. It's not just for celebrities. This can, you can just be, I hate to say an everyday person, but for lack of better words, an everyday person and use surrogacy as a means to have a child. So I have like this mixed emotion about it, but what's been really exciting, and depending on when this airs, we're in early December right now. Last week, I think alone, there were 5 different celebrity articles about different people who have had a surrogacy journey.
It's getting coverage like nothing
Right.
else in right now, it seems like. And yeah, when I was looking at the article, there were so many, like you mentioned, just to name a few, I have down like Paris Hilton, Maria Menounos, Tan France, Aaron Andrews, Rebel Wilson, of course, Kim and Khloe Kardashian, Gabrielle Union. I mean, the list goes on and on. So yeah, it is definitely something that is there's a lot of media coverage around it, specifically with the celebrities using surrogacy as a means to building their family.
Yes.
But before we get into all of that, I like to do a little rapid fire question rounds with my guests just so you guys get to know them a little bit better and a little bit deeper and to just kind of break the ice a little. So we'll go ahead and get into that. Jessie, are you up for that?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, I have some fun ones for you today. So, since we are doing a celebrity episode, my first question for you, this is a big
Oh
one.
gosh.
Who is your favorite Kardashian?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I have always, when I watch my television, have been more of a Real Housewives watcher, so I need to think. I think I'm gonna go Chloe because
Me.
she seems to have the biggest sense of humor of them from the show.
Yeah, I do like that she's a little more like she just seems a little more down to earth too.
Yeah.
And yeah, also funny. Good choice there. Next question I had for you is what is your favorite funny movie? What is your favorite comedy?
Let's see. I would say anything with Will Ferrell in it.
Oh my gosh, I love Will Ferrell. Yes.
He's so
Old
great.
School. Yeah, Old School is
I
actually my
was
favorite.
torn between Old School and Step Brothers. It's like 1A and 1B, they're both great.
Yeah, definitely. And last fun question is what is the most daring thing you've ever eaten food-wise?
Oh, my husband is really the more adventurous eater of us, out of the 2 of us, but I feel like in college, I tried I wanna say shark or frog. It was like something that was breaded, like, it tasted like a chicken nugget, but it was definitely not a chicken nugget, and now it's escaping me which one it was. It was something to that effect.
They're both pretty adventurous,
Yes.
so we'll give that to
Yeah.
you for sure. And, did you know it was like a shark or a frog or something different before you tried it?
Yes, I did know ahead of time. I remember everyone ordered it because it was, like, so outrageous, and I remember trying it and they're like, "This tastes like chicken." Alligator.
Oh, yeah, yeah, definitely.
It was
Alligator.
neither of the 2 I said.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into our surrogacy talk. So, as we mentioned before, so many celebrities are out there, using surrogacy and being public about it. So, I guess our first kind of thought was what are we thinking about how public celebrities are with this? What are maybe the pros of that? How has this helped the world of surrogacy or infertility in general?
I think that a lot of people look up to celebrities, so in a sense, it's destigmatizing and it hopefully is making other people feel less alone by seeing that these people, these celebrities that are in the limelight are also going through the same struggles that they may be facing to have a family. And I also like just with it being in the news, we're kind of able to dispel some of the myths surrounding surrogacy. There's so many myths out there. And I think when when celebrities are speaking about surrogacy on such a public platform, it's like sharing a light about how beautiful it actually is and how it can really make somebody who wouldn't be able to build a family, through their own, baby other or embryo, I should say otherwise.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's really like, again, giving people some hope, letting them know about different options and saying, hey, if she's doing it, then maybe that's something that might work for me too.
Right.
Yeah. And then I also wonder too, like, on one hand, like, I commend them for being public about it, right? Because it's super brave to share your journey.
Yeah.
I also wonder though, they might be more pressured to be public about it though too, because again, if you're using a surrogate, you're not shown or they're not being pictured being
Right.
pregnant, right?
And then
So
there's the
they may
wondering of how the baby got here.
exactly. And so they may feel more pressure to address this publicly. I'm sure their PR person probably talks to them about that, right?
Yeah, it would be really interesting to know, and there probably isn't a great way of knowing how many people wanted to be vulnerable and share their hardship, and other people felt like they had to because they've been photographed the week before without, looking pregnant, and then all of a sudden they have the baby.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
I would
Yes.
say a con would be what I was referencing earlier, and just hoping that people don't feel discouraged that celebrities, you think of them as being so wealthy and then being like, well, how can I afford it if Paris Hilton's affording it? I'm clearly not on the same, pay grade as Paris Hilton.
Yeah, and I think that's like a big question about how accessible it is because we again, like you said, we see celebrities in this light. They obviously have like mansions. I mean, they're on MTV Cribs. They have all these amazing things and probably access to some of the best doctors in the world. And then to think like, how am I going to also utilize that same route to having a baby might seem a little unapproachable or overwhelming. So, can we talk a little bit then, I guess, about that? What is the cost to use a surrogate?
It is a really huge range, and I'll share why in a moment. It can range anywhere from 100 to $200,000. And that
Wow.
is a huge discrepancy, and the discrepancy is for a couple of reasons. The first reason is some go on an independent journey, which means that they found someone in the community or a family member to carry for them so that they may bypass an agency fee. An agency typically will help facilitate a match between a surrogate and intended parent and help manage the surrogacy journey for them. They can run anywhere. I've seen 25,000, I've seen 100,000. So there's and the ones that are at the top typically also have other fees included, like your lawyer fee or psychologist and so forth. But there's a huge difference right there. The second main reason for such a large discrepancy in the number I shared is surrogate compensation.
Mhm.
Compensation will typically range from 35,000 to upwards of 60,000.
Wow. The numbers are just adding up really
Yeah,
quickly there from what you're saying. Uh-huh.
absolutely. And you can see why it's so hard to quote an exact number because there's so many factors. And I'd say that the third big reason is health insurance. Believe it or not, some health insurance policies will have a clause in there that says your pregnancy benefits are excluded if it's a surrogacy pregnancy. Those intended parents would have to purchase a private health insurance plan for their surrogate. And they can run like if you're it depending on your timing, if you get the Affordable Care Act all the way up to a private plan, you could be paying upwards of 20 to $30,000. So some people get really lucky and their surrogate does not have that sort of a clause in their health insurance policy. Sometimes, unfortunately, they have that and you have to purchase additional health insurance. So that is why my range had such a huge discrepancy.
So there's a lot of moving factors.
Yes.
And yeah, that was a huge question of mine that I had is like, you know, first off, not everyone has coverage for general infertility
Right.
treatments. So that's a whole other conversation. But then on top of it, from what I thought was that it was, again, pretty rare to have coverage for if you wanted to go the route of surrogacy aside from just infertility coverage in general.
Absolutely. I actually have a blog post on this that I can send to you if anyone would be interested. But there are a couple of companies that are coming out to help with surrogacy, like with help with fertility benefits. There's a lot more that will help with IVF coverage, less when it comes to surrogacy. But it's
Mhm.
becoming now as employers are trying to become more competitive. A couple
Mhm.
of companies are beginning now to adopt health insurance partnerships with like one's carrot, one's progeny, and they have surrogacy benefits. So it would be like an advantage of
Wow.
choosing job X over job Y because you know that that would be part of your health insurance package.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So looking at the different employers and the
Yes.
coverage there, is there any other way that I guess non-celebs can afford to go through surrogacy?
Yes, there's different grants. A foundation that was just started last year called Gift of Surrogacy. And they are actually one of the few grants that are meant for surrogacy and cover a large contribution of the total cost. There's a
Wow.
lot of other ones. There's Baby Quest, there's Kate Foundation. On the Resolve website, they actually have a lot, and I don't know them all by heart. And the reason is because a lot of them you have to live in that state to be qualified. So I always recommend that people go to the Resolve website and check what's available in their state because there are so many different ones depending where your residence is. So grants and scholarships would be another way. And then there's financing. I know the con of financing is interest rates, but at least it's giving you a loan and a way of moving forward on a surrogacy journey.
Yeah, yeah, at least it's a path
Yes.
forward and kind of talking with your financial advisor and seeing how that fits into, long-term plans that's definitely still be a viable option.
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I've also seen, I mean, this is up, more like at your discretion, but people doing GoFundMe's and like kind of like benefit dinners and things like that. I know people might all have different opinions on that, but that is of course something else that somebody could do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks so much for all of the good ideas for different ways I didn't know about the grants and the scholarships. So that would be obviously such a great help to build your family. So
Absolutely.
love that information.
Yes.
I kind of want to now bring it back to our talk about the celebrities. I first want to say that in the article, there was a discussion about they actually don't pay surrogates that are used by celebrities a higher fee
Right.
than any other person is paid. And I thought that was really interesting because I kind of assumed that it wouldn't be the case, that they were paying them a higher salary because they could, and they could just kind of try to see, I want to have, like, I don't know, this ideal surrogate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty standard and it's nice because you really want your gestational carrier or your surrogate. And gestational carrier is another term for surrogate. It's when the surrogate is carrying, but they are not biologically connected to the baby. So if you hear me say gestational carrier or surrogate, it's interchangeable. You want to make sure that your gestational carrier is doing it for the right reasons. For an example, we one of the requirements is that they're financially stable. So this kind of ties into that. You don't want someone who's just doing it for the money. Like, yes, the money is a great bonus, but you don't want that to be the driving reason.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize that they did a screening and had to check their own finances,
Yes. They
the
they they
surrogate's
shouldn't be
finances.
receiving any government assistance. That's where the line is drawn.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm seeing, again, a lawyer commented on this article basically that they would feel that it would be unethical, almost like coercion,
Right.
like feeling like they had to do this in order to, again, maintain a decent level of living.
Exactly.
S-
Yep. So that's
Yeah.
why that's part of the gestational carrier surrogate screening.
Sometimes I feel like a lot of us, when we're seeing this on the news, we're seeing celebs using a surrogacy to have babies. A lot of us are thinking the cause of that is really just because I don't know how else to say it, but being selfish, right? Like they don't want to ruin their body, or they don't want to risk their health, or they don't want to slow down their career.
Mhm.
Do you think that those might be some reasons for people using a surrogate
So it's
like
interesting,
celebs?
and I didn't mention this yet, but I went through IVF myself. I've had both of my daughters through surrogacy, and my fertility clinic actually has to clear you for surrogacy. So where am I going with that? Like, you can't do it for any reason other than, like, having a physical reason that you would not be safe to carry. So for me, I had a loss, and then I developed secondary infertility, and my loss was at 22 weeks, so I had these 2 issues, getting pregnant and staying pregnant, and so I was a candidate where I am not the best mechanism to have a full-term healthy child. And I am sure that there are fertility clinics out there that do not hold that guideline. I have seen many that do, but that's not to
Mhm.
say that everyone in the United States has that qualification, that it can't just be like a personal preference. Most of the ones I've seen, I should say, do have that you need a reason, but, who knows?
Yeah. Wow. Well, that's so interesting to know that it's not just like a lot of places, it's not just like, I don't feel like having a baby right now.
Yeah.
Don't want to get any stretch marks,
And
you
you know what's
know?
interesting? I had a client who it wasn't a physical reason, but it was a mental reason, and I thought that that was great, that that was also a reason to have a surrogate, and, like, that you would be cleared by the fertility clinic for that reason because of the medications that she was on and a litany of things, but
Mm.
it still made her a candidate, and I was so glad that she's qualified for that because that can be just as important.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's really cool to know that they also consider that
Yes.
in the scope of deciding who's eligible for surrogacy. And with the celebs, many of them have actually reported something a little more along the lines, as you said, having significant struggles with infertility, experiencing a loss. Specifically, Elizabeth Banks was sharing that she suffered from a broken belly, which AKA infertility, and wasn't able to carry children on her own. So she did share publicly that that was the case for her.
Yeah, and I remember forget the reason behind Kim Kardashian, but I know it was something following a delivery too that caused her to have some of those issues as well.
Oh, wow. Okay, I hadn't heard that one. And also, I saw that Gabrielle Union, too, she seemed to be pretty public about grieving over the fact that she was not able to carry her baby and, really said, like, there's nothing more than I would have wanted to do than cook my own baby.
Yeah.
So, and she even goes further to say that the idea of it felt like surrendering to failure.
Yeah, and I remember my daughter is similar age to hers, and I remember following her on Instagram and feeling really inspired by her sharing her journey and it like encouraging me when I was going through the process myself.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel for her on that, and it's such a loss to feel that you can't, you know, have the family or build the family that you envisioned in your childhood. You wanna experience feeling pregnancy, you want to have those pregnancy pictures, all of that comes with that, and then for that to not be an option, it's devastating.
Absolutely. I know it's like what you have to almost mourn what you thought was going to be your path to parenthood and then like get to a level of acceptance of where you're at and what it's going to take to build your
Yeah.
family.
In your experience, like, what kind of process is that process?
Yeah, for me, I did not feel the way Gabrielle Union did, where I felt like I was surrendering. For me, I was just, and we probably agree on this part. I was just so longing to be a mom. The days felt so long. When a lot of this started, I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and everybody around me was pregnant. And it was just a terrible, difficult time in my life. So I just wanted to be a mom and get there the safest way possible. And I knew, given that I had had a loss and then what it had done to my body, that it was going to be a surrogate that helped me get to the finish line. I think I felt worse when I was in that limbo. Like, do I move forward with surrogacy? Do I try on myself? Like that felt worse. I think when I had a clear plan and a trajectory, I felt really I guess happy, you could say, because I knew that this was what was the best viable plan for to get me to become a mama.
And again, I'm so sorry to hear about your
Oh,
loss,
thank you.
but I am, you seem so empowered by just knowing, like, hey, this route didn't work out, but I'm willing to do the next route that is going to get me what I want and, bringing these babies to earth. So That's awesome. And is that how you decided to start the surrogacy business?
Yes, and I actually was sharing with a prospective client today that I always felt like the statistic, like if something weird and wonky, and so many people on their infertility journey probably feel this way that are listening. If something weird and wonky is going to happen and there's a very low likelihood that it will happen, it's happened to me. So yeah, I took all of that and just like wanted to take everything I learned to help really share that with others to help them have a smoother path to parenthood.
Yeah, definitely. And again, with the surrogacy, like we're talking today, there's so many questions
Mhm.
and so many myths out there.
Right.
So I think it's so helpful to have somebody like you to help guide everyday people. And hey, if celebs need your help too, why
Yeah,
not,
that
right?
would be fun. I'd love it. Yeah, that's really what I wanted to do, and when people work with me, they get surrogacy education because, as you're probably gleaning as I'm, like, sharing different details, there's so many steps in the process, it's very overwhelming, and I just want people to know that when they're working with me, like, I'm holding their hand and I'm just gonna take care of everything, and they can just try to enjoy the fact that there is this woman out there caring for them, which is such a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Can we get into like maybe some reasons that women would even use surrogacy?
Absolutely. So, for me, for example, I had Asherman syndrome, which was scarring of the uterus following an early
Hmm.
delivery. So, basically, as many people listening probably are aware, you need a nice thick lining to implant the embryo. And I had very
Hmm.
thin lining. So, that was, making it very difficult for an embryo to successfully implant. So, that could be a reason. Some women have like PCOS or endometriosis. There's cancer survivors. So,
Hmm.
they might have done egg fertility preservation prior to treatment and then now need to pursue a surrogate. Some epilepsy, just depending on like different medications you might be on, like I said, mentally. And then there's people with recurrent loss. And I hate the unexplained infertility diagnosis, but that might be somebody too that would then pursue surrogacy.
So lots of different reasons then. And I guess it's kind of like, as far as like being cleared to use a surrogate, do you know of any sort of definition as far as what somebody may have to be dealing with medically in order to get that clearance?
I
Are you interested in getting the answer to this question? Well, this is your personal invite to join our exclusive Facebook group to dive deeper into the world of fertility with bonus clips, behind the scenes content, and intimate discussions. Here, you can connect with fellow tribe members, share your experiences, and contribute your insights to shape the future of the show. And it's easy to join. Just search True Fertility Tribe on Facebook, answer a few questions, and you're in. I also have the direct link in the show notes below. See you there. In speaking again about surrogacy, then, celebs have also mentioned struggling with some unexpected downsides. So let's kind of talk about some of the ones that they mentioned in the article. And I just kind of want to get your take on if
Yes.
these are something that's common that you hear about, or is this maybe just celeb world here?
Okay.
So Kim Kardashian talks about a loss of control. So she says specifically, anyone that says or thinks that it's just the easy way out is really just completely wrong. I think it's so much harder to go through it this way because you're not really in control.
Yes, I would 100% agree with that statement. It is really, really important to match with a gestational carrier or surrogate that you're really comfortable with and you trust because you can't be there to see what they're eating or what they're around or any of the things the environment that they're in. You have to trust that they are taking very, good and safe care of your child.
Yeah, definitely. So when you have a surrogate, what is kind of the level of communication that you have with them?
So it can vary and it's based upon your matching preferences. So what I mean by that is in the beginning, parents and surrogates will both create profiles and it has just
Mhm.
that. So like let's say you want to have more of a business relationship, more formal, or like myself, I was very warm and fuzzy, wanted to have, frequent communication. I indicated that. So that way when I was matched with somebody, they had a similar preference. So I wouldn't be annoying them to check in on them, and it would just be more of an organic friendship that would develop because we were on the same page.
Okay. Well, really cool. So it's kind of just like again, finding somebody who's on the same page with you with what you're envisioning this surrogacy journey to be. So hopefully it's more of a match and less friction between you and the surrogate or gestational carrier.
Exactly.
Because, yeah, that you wouldn't want that.
And one of the things I'll do with my clients is give them an interview guide so they can ask all of those hot topics up front. Even though it might be
Hmm.
awkward to ask those questions, you want to get them out in the open immediately, such as like vaccination status, termination status. So that way you're on the same page because the worst thing would be to fall like in love with somebody and then get to the legal phase and not agree on some of the topics. So I always, communication preferences being one of them. I always recommend that people talk about this stuff right away to make
Hmm.
sure you're on the same page and it would be a good match.
Okay. And as far as like then choosing surrogate or being having a surrogate, is it typical that they're in the same city so you like visit each other, or does that also vary
It
significantly?
really varies significantly. I would say some intended parents will request to have a local surrogate, which is fine, but then they just have to expect that their wait's going to be longer. Whereas if
Hmm.
you're almost casting a wider if you don't mind if they're not local to you, because then you have like, essentially a greater pool of women compared to just confined to close to where you live.
Hmm. And as far as I guess, then going back to like that loss of control, is it common to ask your surrogate to eat a particular diet or like have updates about any of those types of things?
So I would say it's in the middle. I wouldn't say it never happens, but I also wouldn't say it's common. I would say it like falls somewhere in the middle. And if, for example, you were vegan and you wanted your surrogate to be vegan, you would put that on your matching profile and hopefully get matched accordingly. Or you would get matched with somebody that didn't mind and perhaps then they just ask, "Hey, that's not how I feed my family, so I'm gonna need a little extra money to, like, pay for 2 separate grocery bills," so to speak. So
Hmm.
those types of things would then be discussed up front. I think if you have a particular lifestyle that you want your surrogate to maintain, to make sure, 1, that they're comfortable, and then 2, if there would be any financial implications if it's not things that they're already doing. Like, eating
Okay.
organic is probably another big one.
Well, that's really cool to know that that's even something that's negotiable.
Yeah, and
Um,
really you can set any terms that you want with the understanding that if you're super picky, you might just wait long.
and Kim also said that she said it was hard to see someone else carrying her child. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely can appreciate that perspective. For me, I did not experience that on a personal level because I was just so happy that there was like a means to this end of this like long, arduous infertility journey. And both of my gestational carriers did such a great job of sending me videos and we FaceTimed for appointments. So I felt really included. I'm sure that's not everybody's experience. But the clients that I've worked with haven't necessarily felt either like they wish that they would have been the ones pregnant. I think they had also come to this understanding like, this is the safest way for me to have my child. And, that's okay that it's me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, everyone kind of has different sentiments and
Yeah.
different feelings, but it's nice to know that some people are at the place where it's just like, no, this is great that my baby is doing well and it's going to be here sooner than later.
Yeah.
So that's really nice that you can get to that place
Yes.
too.
Yeah, and I know
Yeah.
Chloe says that she felt when the baby came that she felt like a level of disconnection, and I definitely did not feel that way at all.
Hmm.
Not to say that
Hmm.
nobody does, but I felt like that was almost like spotlighting a myth that no, I don't want to say nobody feels that way, but I would say it's very, very infrequent.
Yeah, I think sometimes a lot of people like feel like or think that there's just like, okay, I'm carrying the child, then there's this immediate, I have this deeper level of connection almost. But even for me, like having a child, like that connection builds over time from when that child's
Right.
born through that daily care, through that daily interactions. And so I can't, imagine that being lesser just because you didn't give birth.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I also kind of want to talk a little bit about people maybe looking at a couple who decided to use a surrogate as being selfish or, why didn't you just adopt if it's so challenging to have a baby? And honestly, we hear that a lot
Yeah.
in the infertility
Yep.
world in general. It's kind of like the default criticism.
Yep.
And I guess that even came down to Tan France, who is from Queer Eye. And yeah, so people were critical of him. And so he said he had a really good clapback. But for all of those who are asking or really angrily saying that we should have adopted instead of surrogacy, a lot of you have your own kids. If you're so upset about me having my own children, you can adopt. Please go ahead and adopt. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do. So I really loved that. What are your thoughts on that type of criticism? And have you heard that from some of your clients?
Yeah, luckily, no one has had that said to them, but all over social media, I see other women sharing experiences where people have said those things, and not only just in surrogacy, but like you mentioned, going through IVF. And I just think it's so, you know, it's like disrespectful in a way because you're not understanding that they would like to have a child that's biologically connected to them, or however, if they need to use a donor and they have one biological connection. It's just not being thoughtful and taking the perspective of where they're at. And it's not their place to give the opinion unless an opinion is, of course, or
Yeah, I feel like we should just all copy and paste his
yeah,
response if in case
totally.
anyone gets asked that. I love that
Me
one.
too.
He also even goes in to talk about, like, the exploiting a woman's body. Obviously, in a gay couple, they will need to use a surrogate
Right.
if they, are wanting children. So he goes on to talk about the idea or criticism of possibly exploiting a woman's body. And he says, again, I want to make it really clear I didn't grab somebody off the street and kidnap her and get her pregnant, right? And I love that. I mean, he's like, this is somebody that we care about very much, who wanted to do this for us and was generous enough to help us have our absolute dream and raise a family. So you really don't have to worry about our surrogate. She's fine. We're taking very good care of her. And I promise she wanted to do this. So again, yeah, that goes back to the fact that we talked about earlier is this isn't something that is coercion. And there's certain, I guess, things in place to help ensure that it's not.
Absolutely. And a couple of them, just to like recap, were making sure they're not receiving government assistance. They have a background check. Some will even take it a step further and do a home study, depending on the state and different regulations like that. And really, also, they have a psychological evaluation as well to make sure that they're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah. And actually, in some countries, they are not allowed to receive any sort of
Right.
payment for the surrogate, for being a surrogate. Of course, the couple, I'm assuming, has to pay for the medical cost of the pregnancy, but compensation for actually being in the role of the gestational carrier is not allowed.
Correct. Yep. Canada's one of them.
Mm. Okay. I also wanted to talk since he was talking about how much he really loved this surrogate. Is that something that you feel tends to happen over the course of this type of relationship?
Absolutely. Love both of my surrogates. My husband loves them. He talks with their husbands sometimes. It ends up feeling like, in most cases, a family member. You just
Hmm.
develop this bond. You're talking so much, like you're visiting them for for some of the doctor appointments. It's like a really, really beautiful relationship that develops.
Oh, I love that. So, again, it's not uncommon to continue to have that bond between the carrier and your family. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know with mine, for example, we have a shared photo album on our iPhone of our daughters, and they're both on it, so they can see all of the pictures that we're posting on like a weekly basis and watch them grow and show their kids too because their kids saw that their mom was pregnant and this is what she did for this family and
Oh.
look at how happy everybody is and look how the babies are growing up and I think it helps in that regard too.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, do your girls have a special bond with your carrier's children in
So
a way?
my oldest met my baby's carrier's kids, but we haven't seen them since our youngest was born, but we hope to visit them both. Like, we're in touch with them, but none of mine were local. So we have to actually make a plan to travel over to both places to see both of them. But yeah, I would love that. And both of the girls, I mean, the baby is a little too young to understand, but my oldest understands that somebody had to help her grow and it was a very special woman and all of
More people to love your babies,
exactly.
basically. Yeah, I love that. I also wanted to ask that, and this can be, again, a kind of difficult process. And obviously, as we mentioned, celebrities are in the news that they're using surrogates and going through that process. But do you know of any good connections or support groups for what we'll call, I guess, regular people, right? In quotes, to kind of lean on each other or have a safe space to talk?
Yes, there's a couple on Resolve's website. They have a lot of support groups with different topics, like specific. So you could look at you. I would recommend that somebody looks there. The JFF, which is like the Jewish Fertility Foundation, they have support groups that are local and also nationwide. And I'm trying to think of other ones that I know of off the top of my head. I would definitely say to start with the Resolve at first, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Resolve is amazing. And that's so cool to know that they have specialty groups that are just then for surrogacy. Okay. Jesse, is there anything else that you feel like we want to talk about or you want to share for today?
I would just love for people to know if they're beginning their fertility and surrogacy journey and they'd like to meet with me. I do offer a complimentary consultation they can get to through my website, and I would love to help them and really guide them on their journey.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Definitely a wealth of information. And how exactly can they reach you?
My website
What is your
is surrogacysimplified.com. And on Instagram, it's also Surrogacy Simplified. And then my email is my name. So Jessie, Jessie at surrogacysimplified.com.
perfect? I'll make sure to again include that in the notes.
Thank you.
And yeah, so let's just kind of do a quick recap of today's episode. So, plenty of celebrities are in the news using surrogacy. It may not just be for pure vanity,
Right.
there's often an actual medical reason why people would use surrogacy. And as far as cost, yes, it is on the higher, definitely higher side of things. However, there's other options to help you in paying for surrogacy,
Right.
like scholarships, grants, also some sort of loans, all because surrogacy is often not covered by the insurance process. And there are some things that you have to overcome emotionally during the surrogacy process, like loss of control in that process. But again, it's something that you can negotiate certain terms with your surrogate to have a little bit more sense of being on the same page in caring for your growing baby. And there's some support groups too to help you along the way to connect with other real people out there who are using surrogacy to build their families.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so, so much for your time, Jesse.
Oh, you-
It was great speaking with you on this. And I wish you all the best. We'll connect
Likewise.
soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to share these stories, information, and tips with you, or really just allowing me to connect with you on a subject that's so dear and important to your life. I really hope that somewhere out there I was able to reach one of you and to let you know that, again, you're not alone on this journey. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast and do me a solid and share this with your friends or anyone that you think might benefit from hearing this. Also, I'd love it if you could leave a rating or review from wherever you're listening. If you have any questions or you want to share anything about what you heard today with us, please leave a comment on YouTube or Spotify. And for a deeper dive on today's episode, bonus content, and to connect with others in this space, I invite you to join True Fertility Tribe Facebook group. And last but not least, let's be friends on Instagram, where I post almost daily. You can find me at True Fertility. Wishing you all baby dust. Till next time. Bye.